Lovely. 6 o'clock Thursday night, and it's Thursday Garden Chat. So welcome everybody. Just a little bit of an update. We've started our live events. Last week we were in the most beautiful Caisson Gardens in Somerset near Bath with Jason Ingram doing photography, and that was a really wonderful day. And luckily the weather was okay. It wasn't amazing, but it was okay. It didn't rain. And then yesterday we had the first of our three events at Surge Hill, which is the home of Tom and Sue Stewart-Smith. And we were at what's called the Surge Hill Project, which is the plant library. And it was absolutely amazing. When I got there, Tom was sweeping the path. It's lovely. And then he was out collecting in the mist, because it's quite misty yesterday, collecting flowers for us to and perennials for us to discuss. And we had a really interesting group, very focused. So we've got two more of those coming up in July and in September, and there's only a few places left on each of those. And it's a workshop that's based in the plant library, and also at the very end of the day, well, last hour of the day is walking around what I call the greater gardens, which Tom thinks is really funny, but it's all of Tom's gardens, Tom and Sue's gardens, which are very different and very interesting. Yesterday we were in the prairie looking at everything just about growing and talking about weed management with their lovely gardener called Derek. So it is a fantastic day. So there's a couple more of those left. We've got lots more live events coming up that are all booking up, so you do need to not hold back. We've got a pruning day with Caroline, the wonderful Caroline Jackson, at White House Farm, which is Maurice Foster's incredible garden and arboretum. Maurice and his daughter Claire were on Thursday Garden Chat about a month or so ago now. And it is the most extraordinary place, but of course Caroline is such a fantastic tutor. James Hitchmo at Knepp is almost sold out, so if you are holding off on that, we literally, I think, have about 3 tickets left, so understandably. Then we have 2 days of Flow 1 and Flow 2, which is a sort of a workshop at the Hepworth in Wakefield with Nigel Dunnett, and this is a creative workshop. It's a way of approaching garden design in a sort of creative and slightly illustrative way. We did a day there last year, and it was actually, Nigel posted recently, it was one of his most favorite, or one of his most favorite live events that he's done. I think he got such a lot from it as well. Then in June, we are heading over to the Netherlands, to the wonderful gardens of Meenraus. And the garden, or part of the garden, is celebrating its centenary. So, and you really wouldn't know it. It's the most incredible garden. It looks like it was designed just yesterday. And then a little bit further down the line, also, we are going to be back with John Little. So, and I should also just mention, we do have another 2 events at White House Farm with Maurice Foster. So that's a little bit of a roundup of most of our live events, which, like I say, don't hold off, because they are selling quickly, and we need to, if you need a ticket, if you want a ticket, that's great. Webinars are a little bit on hold now because it's the summer, and you're all much too busy to sit in front of a computer in the evenings. You're all out gardening. So but we have so much recorded material on the website, so please, if you do want to sort of delve back into things that you've missed, we've been doing a sort of a webinar a week, basically. So every year, there's more and more and more webinars in our webinar room. And then, of course, all of our Thursday Garden Chats, past Thursday Garden Chats, go onto YouTube, where they remain for quite a while, and then they go into our members archive. And then that's the other thing just to mention, is our membership. We have 2 levels of membership. You don't have to be a member, but if you are a member, you do get lots of wonderful benefits and discounts and so on. And so there's so many things on offer, but do have a good look through the website and familiarize yourself with what we do. This Thursday Garden Chat is a free public service broadcast, as Noel likes to say. So we do this time for free, and our wonderful guests come along for free. But if anybody can spare a dime to help us out, then it's all gratefully received, and it all goes into the pot for us to develop new ideas. You know, one of which is filming, where we've got a film that's being edited at the moment, which we hope to release in a not too long, in about a month or so's time. So, you know, we're always doing lots of new things, so you know, it all helps. Anyway, so I'm going to pass over to Noel, and he's going to introduce our wonderful guest this evening.
Thank you, Annie. So our guest this evening is a lady who I met initially through teaching. For the last 10 years or so, I have been a tutor on Learning with Experts, which is a very innovative, pioneering education portal whose CEO is particularly keen on gardening. So gardening has always been very much at the vanguard of what Learning with Experts do. So I've been tutoring on a number of courses on this for a number of years now, and from those very early sessions made, in fact, some really very good friends. And then about, I suppose, probably was about maybe 5 years or so. Was it pre-COVID, Wendy?
Oh, it's during COVID.
It was
Yeah, I
during
started
COVID.
taking classes
Right.
during
Okay.
COVID.
So during
Kept me
COVID,
sane.
we had an enormous number of new students. A lot of people, you know, seeking to use that sort of enforced downtime to learn about horticulture. And I started to get these assignments in from Wendy Hilty, who was down on the South Carolina coast. And had a rather extraordinary garden with a rather extraordinary climate, and faced a set of rather extraordinary challenges, notably alligators, snakes, exotic wildlife. And she did these assignments that were just really good fun, and just clearly came across as somebody who was passionate about learning about gardening, about her garden, and you know, a real way with words. And so when this particular course ended, I suggested to her, as I do it occasionally with LWE students, that, you know, I am also involved in this other project, and, you know, why don't you tune in sometime? So Wendy then became one of our real regulars, one of those familiar faces we had from COVID onwards during this programming. That's you know, been a really nice, reassuring part of our working lives. So it's really fantastic that Wendy has actually now joined us in the media crowd, because she's written a book about gardening in the Lowcountry. So she's going to be telling us about, you know, what the Lowcountry is, and why it is a special and challenging place for gardening, and hopefully her book will introduce many other people in the region to being as exciting and adventurous a gardener as she is. So welcome, Wendy.
Thank you so much. It's funny being on the other side now, you know.
Yeah. You're poacher turned gamekeeper now, Wendy.
Yes, yes. And I do have to tell you all, just as typical in the Lowcountry, we are now under a tornado watch. So if all of a sudden I whirl into space like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, you know what's happened.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
It's a normal day.
Oh. Great. So Wendy, you're going to tell us, you're going to give us a little bit of background about how you got into this wonderful world of gardening.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's a very circuitous route. I started gardening, I think, probably at the age of 10. My parents had built a house in the suburbs outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And like so many people in the end of the 50s, gives my age away, they wanted some shrubs to line up as little soldiers across the front of their house. So we went out to a nurseryman, and he had plants. I had never seen plants before. I'd only seen little yews lined up, and a few geraniums. We call them geraniums, pelargoniums, in pots. And I was looking at these plants, and he said, "Would you like one?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And he gave one to me. It was a cup plant, Silphium perfoliatum, which is an American prairie plant. And I grew it in Ohio, and I loved it and nurtured it. And that was the beginning. Unfortunately, I never had a place or the time where I could really garden until in the year 2006. I retired, got married, and moved all in the 3-day time period back to Ohio from Boston. And I had an acre, a beautiful, nice, level acre of land with pretty decent soil. And I started really gardening and joined the garden club, ended up, of course, being president, because you're fresh meat, you know, whenever you move on, you know, you're going to be the head of all volunteer activities. And worked with the Cleveland Botanical Garden and just had the time of my life. Northern Ohio was wonderful, but there was one thing wrong with it. In one word, winter. Starting in November, you have gray skies for 4 months. You don't see the sun. It is freezing cold. You get lake effect snow. And my husband doesn't like the cold. So then we moved down to the Lowcountry of South Carolina. And I decided to take the master gardening class from Clemson University. And for people who are not familiar with master garden class, it's always given in each individual state by a land grant university that is in charge of almost all horticultural and agricultural programs. So it varies from state to state. For example, I'm certified in South Carolina, but I could not be a master gardener in Ohio unless I took the master gardener class from Ohio State University.
Oh, yeah.
Virginia, it'd be Virginia Tech. So it doesn't roll over from state to state.
Wow. Oh, I didn't
Because
realize that.
you're trained in those individual conditions,
Right.
that particular state.
Interesting.
So yeah, it is kind of interesting. It's unique. We don't have an overarching body like the RHS or something like that to do our training. So it is very different. But I was really glad I did it, because the conditions down here are very, very different than anything people find up north. And we have huge numbers of baby boomers now retiring and moving down south, and they don't know what to do. So that's how I got into gardening.
Wow, wow. So are you actively helping the baby boomers establish their gardens then? Yeah.
Yes, I belong to an organization called Lowcountry Master Gardeners, and what we do for a $75 fee, which goes back to Clemson for horticulture scholarships, we bring a team of master gardeners to your house, and it's called Rent a Master Gardener. I know that there are other people in the States who have been on Garden Masterclass who talked about it. But we do a complete survey of your yard, tell you about every shrub, every plant you have, give you a bag for a soil test, because that's really important down here. And then write up a 20-page report that, first of all, talks about low country gardening in general. Irrigation, soil testing, climate, all of those things. And then specifically about the person's yard. So that's been one way we've really helped them. I write a column in the local newspaper. I have a blog called the Kumya Gardener. Kumya is Gullah for newcomer. They're Binyas. The Gullah are the descendants of the original people, enslaved people from Sierra Leone, who were brought over here.
Wow.
And they have a very rich and very unique culture, and their language is really awesome.
Yeah.
So
Noel's waving something in front of the.
Here we have a
Oh, that's a yes.
Yes. Donated by a kind resident of South Carolina.
Yes, yes.
Really
Michael
beautiful.
Smalls
really
made that. You'll see a picture of Michael Smalls later in my presentation. He's the master basket weaver using swim grips.
On the subject of master gardeners, in a couple of weeks' time, we are going to Texas, where Jenny Price Nelson and a colleague of hers are going to be talking about the Master Garden program, obviously with a particularly Lone Star State take to it. But we wanted to unravel this program for really quite a long time, because it's a really, really special thing, and a really, I think, uniquely US North American contribution to how you do horticultural outreach.
It is very helpful, and we try to be helpful. It does vary. Now, when I lived in Massachusetts, I never even heard of a master gardener.
Really?
Ohio, it was more active. Down here, it is an incredibly active organization. So it really depends on the university that's in charge. how much outreach they want to do. And we're really lucky because Clemson is amazing. They do all different kinds of classes. One time I took a class on Roundup with a group of cotton farmers. It was pretty interesting. Me and cotton farmers. So, it's very unique, but it's been a great learning experience because the idea is that you share your knowledge.
Yes.
Wendy, why did you choose South Carolina? I mean, I know you wanted to move somewhere warm, but why that particular location?
My husband had come down for vacations to South Carolina, so he knew the area. And so he wanted to come down to this area. And it was one of those things where we were actually down here for a wedding. We drove across this causeway to look at this island. And within 48 hours, we owned a house. We fell.
Wow.
It's a great place.
Wonderful.
Great. So do you want to start your presentation?
Sure. Hopefully I can get it to work.
Yes, because we had a little bit of a problem earlier, didn't we? Oh, this is hopeful. There we are. Yeah.
There
Just need to play slideshow. Braille.
Play from start. There it is.
Hooray.
The background that you see is actually our state flower, Carolina jessamine, and it starts blooming the first week in February. And that's how we know spring is here. And it is everywhere. The rest of the year, you wouldn't even notice it, but you drive down the highways and they are just bright yellow. It is absolutely glorious. So that's one of our best things. Where is the Lowcountry? I think Noel probably thought it was gardening under big skies, but no windmills. The Lowcountry is basically one of the largest areas of tidal marsh or wetlands in the United States. It's just a huge area. The county I live in, 65% of the land is underwater during high tide. And this is a view from my backyard. You can see the tidal marsh, all that grass, which is called Spartina grass, that will be covered during high tide. So this is the tides just coming in. So it is an area that has certain iconic features like live oak trees, Quercus virginiana, with Spanish moss, which is neither Spanish nor a moss, but is an epiphyte related to the pineapple plant. We have these beautiful trees that are protected by law, but you might know of the Lowcountry because of this guy, Forrest Gump. All of Forrest Gump was filmed in the Lowcountry, literally 10 miles from my house. And the box of chocolate, in fact, is from a chocolate store right around the corner from pretty much where I live. So a lot of people know the Lowcountry just because of Forrest Gump, of all things. The Lowcountry stretches from Charleston, South Carolina to Savannah, Georgia. We're in the same longitude as Pittsburgh. So the United States coastline takes a big indentation. So we've been lucky. We haven't gotten a lot of hurricanes. They usually go from Florida and then head right up to North Carolina because we're so indented with what's called the North Atlantic Bight. So that's one of the good things. The scenery is pretty nice. This is a view from my house during high tide on the right. There are beautiful waterways for boating. There are many, 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 many golf courses. That's actually a golf tee right behind my house that you can see. So people really love to visit there for vacation, and it's particularly nice in the winter. I wouldn't go there in July and August. Charleston is the most visited city in the United States. It is absolutely packed with tourists, and it's charming and beautiful. I kind of avoid it and leave it to the tourists, but it's also a foodie capital. They're always talking about the different kinds of foods in Charleston, seafood and all of the gullah dishes. And so people really, really enjoy visiting Charleston. Great beaches. People come down from the upper Midwest to go to the beach specifically, miles and miles and miles of unspoiled beaches. And then at the other end of the Lowcountry is my favorite city, Savannah, Georgia. Savannah is, if you've ever read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil or seen the movie, it's quite fun. They call themselves Charleston's slutty sister. You can walk around with an open cocktail, nobody says anything. It's quite the city, lots of bars, lots of restaurants. It's beautiful. It's built on squares. The original English settlers built it on 25 different squares, and the squares are all planted with beautiful live oaks and tropical plants. It's just lovely. Now, the only problem with being in the Lowcountry is you are in the South. And here is Noel's very favorite magazine, Garden and Gun, which tends to be less garden and more gun. Actually, Noel, I do have to tell you, it's not a bad magazine. If you think of it as being town and country, that instead of Pim's Cup and Springer Spaniels, there's bourbon and moonshine and blue-tipped coonhounds. That's what Garden and Gun is. But it does have restaurant guides and features about famous Southern people and things like that. But that gives you a little slice of the South. And unfortunately, the Civil War isn't over here. This is a billboard that was about 10 miles from my house. It was just taken down last year. General Sherman and his Yankee army, terrorists, arsonists, thieves. It was 160 years ago. You lost, get over it. But also, it's not called the Civil War. It is the War of Northern Aggression. So, yes, and that is how it's taught. I do have to say, when I was at University of Aberdeen, I took a course on the American Revolution. It was called The Revolt of His Majesty's American Colonies. So it goes both ways, I guess. And just because you don't want children to ever forget, they have reenactments. And here you can meet General Robert E. Lee, and he'll be on hand to meet the kiddies, and they can have their photograph taken with him. I don't know why he's holding up a cross. It looks like he's trying to banish a vampire or something. So I don't exactly get that, but you can meet all of these Civil War impersonators. Ironically, there was no Civil War in the Lowcountry, even though it started at Fort Sumter in Charleston. The Union Army, the Union Navy and Army sailed into Port Royal Sound and basically took over the entire area with hardly a shot being fired. So when you go to any of our towns, particularly Beaufort, which is absolutely gorgeous, and that's where Forrest Gump was largely filmed, all of the big plantation houses, all of the lovely their summer homes of the plantation owners are still intact because the Northern Army took them over to use as Army hospitals or officers' quarters or places where they could have their pictures taken on the front porch. And I want you to look at the kid, and he is a kid, third from the left, and see if you don't think he looks like the naughtiest child. He looks like every evil little child I ever had in one of my classes. And he's a soldier in the Union Army, but it is the South. The homes have been beautifully preserved. This is called Title Home, also called the Big Chill House because the movie Big Chill was filmed there. Again, people are living in these houses and maintaining them beautifully. There are lovely gardens behind all of these older homes. They tend to be a huge amount of hardscape, and I'll explain why hardscape is so important down here. Lots and lots of box, lots and lots of tropicals, very few perennials, and some annuals. So they're all very formally laid out, just as they would have been in the 18th century.
Hi, I hope you've been enjoying this recording. If you would like to see the rest of it, you do need to join Garden Masterclass. These recordings are from our Thursday Garden Chat series, which we run every Thursday at 6 o'clock London time. The recordings go to YouTube, where they stay for some time, usually a few months. But then the most popular ones we take off and we make available to members only. We've now got something like 200 hours of interviews and presentations from garden and landscape and plant people from all over the world. So there's a huge amount to watch. Other advantages of membership are podcasts, discounts on our webinars, live events, and a 50% discount on our webinar recordings, which mount up to about 100 hours of seriously information-packed stuff from global garden and landscape experts. So do please consider joining us, and then you can see the rest of this recording.
Actually, the first formal garden in America was in the Lowcountry, and there's a battle between two plantations. They're rice plantations. That's how people made their money in the Lowcountry, was through rice and indigo. Magnolia Plantation outside of Charleston and Middleton Place outside of Charleston. They're both beautiful, beautiful gardens. They both claim to be the first formal garden in America. Middleton had a French gardener as well as an English gardener. Magnolia had an English gardener they brought over because nobody in North America knew how to garden. We do know that Magnolia Plantation was the first garden that was open to the public. So that is its claim to fame, and it is still open to the public, and it is a wonderful, wonderful place. In fact, that's where I met Bree, Arthur, and Jenks Farmer about a month ago. They were doing a symposium there. The three most iconic southern shrubs, which you really think about when you think about the southern part of the United States, camellias and azaleas and gardenias, all were brought via Asia to England, then to the Lowcountry. The azaleas and the camellias were brought to Middleton Plantation for the first time, and also to Magnolia. The gardenia was sent to a Scottish doctor who actually graduated from the University of Aberdeen. So he was living in Charleston, and he was sent a gardenia, and he loved it, and they named it after him. So it's named after Dr. Andrew Garden. So that got its start in the United States in Charleston. Now, gardening in the Lowcountry has its challenges. Annie's very favorite animal. I've only had an alligator in my garden once. I was going out to get the paper about 6:30 in the morning. I hadn't had my coffee yet, which means that I wasn't quite awake. And I walked down, picked up the paper, walked back, and then I noticed by the side of the driveway was a 5-foot alligator just lying there. And he just kind of sat there, and I went back into the house and had my coffee. And then later we noticed him lumbering off towards a lagoon. They don't like salt water except when they get parasites on their scales, and then they'll go into salt for a beauty spa treatment. But for the most part, they'll stay out of your gardens. They just like to lie on the banks of the lagoons, and just they don't seem to bother anyone. I wouldn't go walking the poodle next to them, however. They do have a taste for small dogs. These guys are more of a problem if you look at their claws, and they're recent imports from Florida and Texas. We haven't had them. They're moving north. These are armadillos, 9-banded armadillos. And their biggest issue is that they dig, and they love to dig giant holes. And you know, they're not a big issue. The best way to get rid of them is spray them with a garden hose. And then they'll just kind of roll up in a ball. This is probably our worst garden thug, the Bambis. I have an electric fence around my backyard because they love roses. They love agapanthus. Anything I want to grow, they absolutely adore. They can eat anything they want in my front yard. I do not care. Go at it. They can go to the nature preserve next door to my house, but Bambis are a problem. And we have snakes, we have lizards, we have skinks, which are like lizards on steroids, frogs. But, you know, that's just part of it. We have lots of gray squirrels, and I understand we've gifted them to you. Sorry about that. Squirrels, raccoons, you know, coyotes. I saw a coyote the other day, foxes. You know, we just live with them. You know, they're part of our environment. Well, where I live is what's called a sea island. We have two types of islands in the South, sea islands and barrier islands. Barrier islands face the open ocean. Sea islands are enclosed by salt marsh. So our sea island is probably 15 miles from the open ocean. And you can have salt marsh as far inland as 50 miles from the ocean, and it is still salt. We get to the island by causeway. I don't happen to like boats very much, but we are surrounded by the salt marsh, which is just rich and teeming with life. Shrimp, oysters, sharks come up into the marshes to breed, all different kinds of fish. It's just a very, very rich environment. But there are some challenges. As I said, we're under a tornado watch right now. So I wanted to look a little bit at seasons and soil. They're both pretty unique. Our climate, if you took a geography class, our climate would be called humid subtropical. So we're supposed to have cool, dry winters, and we do have definitely hot, humid summers. Now, last year, our winter was incredibly mild. This is 23. In February, it was 80 degrees Fahrenheit, pretty much all month long. But in the winter, our temperatures can go as low as 24 Fahrenheit -4 Celsius, and as high as 100 degrees in the summer, 38 Celsius. For the most part, our winter temperatures are between 60 and 70 Fahrenheit with very pleasant autumns and springs. When it rains, it really rains. I have already gotten 3 messages on my cell phone to take in my furniture because we're going to get a big thunderstorm at 4 o'clock. So, you know, when we get a thunderstorm, we really get a thunderstorm. No doubt about it. We have some interesting seasons. Again, it kind of bounces up and down. It can be 80 degrees one day and 50 degrees the next day. We actually have one season that takes place in March that everybody calls the pollinating. And that is when the oak trees and the conifers, the white pines, give off their pollen, and it is unbelievable. It's like yellow snow. Fortunately, it doesn't last as long as winter. It's only about 2 weeks. But even the alligators are yellow. You'll see them on the banks, and they're absolutely covered with pollen. You'll be washing your car once a day. You close up your porch. You cover all your furniture. It's quite something. And then, of course, summer, hell's front porch. It is really, really hot. And that's why last year we went to Orkney and Shetland in July and August. We escape. Well, our soil is rather unique. I said I'd mention a little bit about hardscape. One of the biggest industries in South Carolina is mining clay in Carolyn. So we have a huge paver and brick industry here. So the soil is very, very, clay impregnated, which of course you have problems with drainage. My soil, when I first moved in, because I'm right on the marsh, was sand on top of clay. And I cannot tell you how many shovels I broke or how much compost I've added. The other really odd thing about our soil is it is loaded with phosphorus. We have an excessive amount of phosphorus. So when you buy fertilizer down here, you have to look for this, and this is what they sell, 10-0-10. You do not want to add any more phosphorus into the soil. So what I do, here they are, phosphorus mining near Charleston. You can actually, when you go to the plantations near Charleston, there's Phosphate Road, and you can see where the mines were. They use that not only for fertilizer, but also for munitions. So there is a reason why we have so much phosphate in our soil. I use banana soup. I just cut up banana peels and put them in water, and they are a good source, seem to be a good source of potassium. My roses are very happy. I try not to buy fertilizer, and I don't use any pesticides whatsoever, and I've never had any problems. This is probably our favorite compost, which is mushroom compost. It's cheap, it's better than fertilizer. It works to enrich the clay soil. You can get it anywhere. And I just top dress everything with compost. No more deep digging. I just top dress and use the compost constantly. We also have a problem with our shrubs. Because we have POAs, and POAs, property owners associations or homeowners association, they require that you cover the foundation of your house with shrubs. And the landscapers, trying to keep the POAs happy, often buy shrubs that are totally inappropriate for that place. Like they'll put sweet viburnum, which grows to 30 feet tall, right up butted against the house. The first year, the shrubs may sleep. The second year, they sleep. The third year, they leap. Sleep, creep, then leap, and they will eat your house alive. I mean, it's unbelievable that one of the chapters in the book is, why are my shrubs eating my house? It's just the right plant in the right place. Don't put something that's going to grow to 30 feet tall like this. Why would you do this? We also have landscapers who are in love with meatballs. They absolutely adore making your shrubs into geometric shapes. I do have people who mow and blow and the lawn keeps getting smaller and smaller. So pretty soon there won't be anything for them to do. I've given them 4 shrubs by the side of my house that they're allowed to meatball, and that keeps them happy. But that seems to be a huge issue. People just don't know what kind of shrubs to plant next to their house. So that's where the master gardeners and our education comes in, telling people, no, don't plant that. It will take your roof off in about 3 years' time. And then there's the other problem with kamyas who come down south. They have been fixated since time memorial with the great American lawn. This is one of my pet peeves. Turf grass is not even indigenous to North America. The early settlers had to bring grass seed with them. And for some reason, Americans are fixated on their lawns. It is a healthy thing to do. It means that you're upper middle class. I mean, there are all these things that go with having a perfect lawn. And the ads really try to push that. The American Golf Association tries to push that. Scott, the big fertilizer and grass seed company, tries to push that. This is the idyllic American life. The guys sitting out, drinking beer around, talking about their lawnmower, while the ladies in their apron are fixing burgers and potato salad. This is what lawns look like down here. They just don't grow well unless you want to fertilize them to death. It's very expensive. Deal with the mole crickets and all the other weird diseases that we have. You have to use specific southern grass like St. Augustine or Bermuda grass, or now the big one is zoysia. Zoysia does seem to be a little more forgiving. But this is what most lawns look like. So part of our education is to say to people, pine straw the area, make it look natural. Just let the natural plants take over. We've got tons of native plants. Let them take over your front yard. Don't try to grow this perfect billiard table, top. It's not going to happen. So that's why I wrote the book, How to Garden in the Lowcountry for Newcomers, How to Succeed as a Kamya Gardener. It has a sense of humor in it, because I think anybody who gardens has to have a sense of humor. I've never met a dour gardener. I'm sure there are, but every gardener I've ever met has had a great sense of humor. It's also interesting because I trained as an historian, and historians have a long tradition of being gardeners, which I think is kind of interesting. Maybe we like that continuity, or we like to plant for the future or something. I don't know. But that was my ambition, to try to kind of help people who went through the same things that I did. And you can grow really nice stuff. I have enough Verbena bonariensis right now to supply probably the entire state of South Carolina. There's pretty much nothing that I shouldn't say that. I should say that anything that will grow in a zone 9, which is what we are, I will grow and I will try. And most of the time it is successful. We also have a very long growing season. I plant annual seeds in October. They come up the first week in March and bloom for about 2 months. And then you have a whole nother part of the garden that comes alive and blooms all the way through until usually the first week in January. So this is what my garden looks like in November. So it's pretty colorful. A lot of the American native plants, as Noah well knows, which is why they're used in naturalistic planting, are late season bloomers. And they do beautifully down here. That's our muley grass, which is our native grass. It's sweet grass. It is glorious the whole month of October. It becomes bright pink. There's also a white variety. and the gullah collect it and weave it into baskets. The gentleman on the right, Michael Smalls, is the man who made your basket, Noel. He's wonderful. He is so cool. Cool guy. This is my garden the 1st of April. The snapdragons will die 1st of July, but some of the salvias will keep going. And you can grow roses amazingly well down here. This is David Austin's Abraham Darby. And like his namesake, the very industrious Quaker, Abraham Darby bloomed all year long. He never stopped. I finally cut him back. We traditionally cut roses down on Valentine's Day. I cut him down February 14th and said, rest. But any of the English roses do beautifully here. Don't try to go peonies, don't try to grow lilacs, don't try to grow forsythia. There's a lot of things you can't grow, but roses seem to love to grow in the Lowcountry. Any kind of American prairie plants will do well, coneflowers, rudbeckia, anything like that. They're very, very happy down here. I even found time this last winter, I had this ugly shaded area that flooded. So I turned it into a little kind of a Japanese garden. The thing that looks like a bonsai is actually a dwarf gardenia. And I kind of cut it up and made it look like a bonsai and put the little rocks in and grabbed moss from one side of the garden and moved a camellia in, found a Japanese maple. So this area is great because I don't know if you can see to the right-hand side where the river rocks are, the black river rocks, that area will flood. It'll be flooded by 6 o'clock tonight, but the river rocks, keep it from really doing any damage. And it looks totally normal, totally natural. So I'm all about that. Thanks to Gwendolyn at Denman's, I did a gravel garden, and the gravel garden keeps getting larger and larger and larger, and my lawn keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I was afraid it'd be too hot for down here, but the light color of the pebbles reflects the heat, and it's really great for Mediterranean plants that don't like humidity. So I've been able to grow for the first time culinary sage, which has always been a problem because it doesn't like the dampness in the soil. So I've been able to grow euphorbia, cardoon, different kinds of salvias that don't like our humid conditions. So it was a success. This is its 2nd year. And as I said, it's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger next year. Just another kind of a view of what my garden looks like maybe a couple of days ago. So salvias do really, really well down here. Now we can grow tropical things. This is a loquat. I didn't plant it. It was planted when I bought the house. I share the fruits. I basically give the fruits away. So the raccoons and the squirrels enjoy the fruits. It's kind of a cool looking plant. I wouldn't pull it out. I'm not a big tropical plant grower, but there are some really interesting looking things that you can grow from the tropics. A lot of plants from Mexico, a lot of plants from Asia. But we have some great native plants. This is a pitcher plant blooming. Excuse me, they do have beautiful flowers, and then they get the big tall pitchers. They do eat flies. In the fall, when I cut them back, those pitchers, those long tubes, will be full of what are called no-see-ums, which are like midges. We call them flying teeth. They're not very pleasant insects. They're native to South Carolina, but because they're protected by law, I buy mine from the Pacific Northwest. So I have 4 pitcher plants now, and I have bogs on my deck. They have to be watered with either rainwater or distilled water. You can't use mains because the chemicals in the water will kill them. But, other than that, they're so much fun to grow, and the flowers are so different than anything you'd ever see. I actually saw South Carolina pitcher plants outside of Aberdeen, Scotland at a castle last summer. I was amazed. Baptisia is native to South Carolina. This one's called Carolina Moonlight. You'll see it growing in the woods. It's usually white or purple. It doesn't last very long in our heat, unfortunately, but the foliage is gorgeous all summer long. Doesn't die back until October. This plant I absolutely fell in love with, and I didn't plant it. It came up in a pollinator garden that I maintain. It's quite a large space. And I looked at these plants coming up and I said, that is not a weed. I don't know what it is, but it's not a weed. It's a member of the Joe Pye weed family, Eupatorium. And it is a great pollinator magnet. It's about 5 feet tall, has beautiful white blossoms that last from probably the middle of July all the way through until December. And we've been getting some really unusual butterflies that have never been seen in South Carolina on this Eupatorium. So it's well worth it. And as I said, I didn't plant it. So thank you, birds. Gaillardia is native. You see it growing right up through the sand, blanket flower. Loves to grow down here. Goldenrod. We think of goldenrod as a weed. I love goldenrod. I absolutely adore it. It is everywhere. It's by the side of the road. It's in the fields. It's in ditches. I just think it's one of the most spectacular plants. The bees love it. Why would you not have goldenrod, a native in your garden? So hopefully what I have achieved is that when people go to a garden center down south, this is what will come up on their credit card slip. And as we all know, you never have enough plants. So that is the end of my presentation, the formal part of it, but I would be glad to answer any questions people might have.
Oh, that's fantastic, Wendy. I don't think I've laughed so much at any other presentation. That was just fantastic. Really, really wonderful.
Great, thank you.
You had me laughing out loud. And of course, I've got my copy of your lovely book here as well.
I taught a course that went at Northeastern University that went from 8:15 at night to 10:15. And I had to make, British history or French history or German history or whatever it was. I had to make it entertaining for these students. And
well, you certainly got that.
It had to be funny. It had to be entertaining.
Yeah, no, it was just fantastic. I've got a question. So why does the POA insist on people covering their foundations? Are foundations like underneath the skirt or something? What, is it like seeing someone's ankle?
Our houses, for the most part, are elevated.
Yeah.
For airflow, we do not have basements or cellars or whatever you call them. We just don't. It's
right.
Because of the dampness in the soil and the clay and the floods,
yeah.
a high tidal surge.
Yeah.
So our house is built up on concrete blocks.
Right.
And they don't want you to see that.
Okay.
Even houses that are built on a slab, they really don't like the looks of the concrete foundation that the house is put on.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I can figure out. Well, that's what they say in their manual, which is about 200 pages long, of what you can do and what you can not do. We're all down here, all gardeners are pretty much training POAs in a new way of thinking. You don't have to have a green swath of yard in front of your house. There are other things you can do that are very attractive. Native grass is much better for the environment. So it's a learning process, and it's not just here. It's in other parts of the state. I remember a master gardener from Columbus, Ohio, who's now a master gardener down here. She was talking about kind of guerrilla gardening. And what she did is bit by bit, she got rid of her front yard and planted perennials. Yeah. And soon everybody in the whole
doing the same thing.
She didn't do the whole thing all at once because she thought it'd be too much of a shock for people to all of a sudden see these beautiful flowers when there had been this pristine green lawn. But
it's relatively uncontentious, because I gather in certain areas of the States, this has become, yet another issue in the culture wars, lawn or no law.
Yeah, very much so. I think so. It's so funny to read the history of the lawn.
Yes.
That designers, early landscape designers and architects like Frederick Law Olmsted, but I'm thinking of the other guy. Oh my gosh, well, how can I not remember his name? But anyway, he formulated the beautiful, perfect American homestead. And it had to have a front porch, which of course is very different from UK. And it had to have a perfect lawn. If it didn't have a perfect lawn, you were morally bereft. There was something wrong with you. And he really tied it to morals.
Really?
There's this incredible drawing series called Good Homestead, Bad Homestead. The good homestead has little picket fence, a beautiful little lawn, a beautiful front porch, a garden urn right in the middle, of course. The bad homestead has pigs rooting around in the front yard, so, and it was tied to this American ideal of, being perfect and being middle class.
Amazing.
The land of the free, the land
and the brave.
Yeah. And a couple of years ago when I was teaching at Chanticleer, there was some people, they might have been from South Carolina, but they asked me, one of the questions was, so what would you do about armadillos? I said, I've got absolutely no idea. Why don't you move to Manhattan?
Well, you know what you do have to do, and
I did it.
It's very expensive. You have to put a wire mesh underneath the foundation of your house where they enter in, and it has to go out 3 feet under the ground. You don't want them under your house because they'll form burrows and they'll pull down your insulation and your pipes.
Wow.
Because all of your pipes for your house run underneath, and your heating pipes and everything.
Yeah.
So we had to do that. They kept coming in, and we had this tracker that came and would trap these armadillos and carry them off. I didn't want to know where they went. And this happened for I don't know how long, and it was expensive. So we finally had to do the wire mesh underneath the house.
Yeah.
Once they get under there and they find a lovely place to live, they want to be there, and they carry leprosy. Why would you want them?
Wow. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
We've got some questions for you, Wendy. So Joy Gray wants to know, do you find the mushroom compost is alkaline?
Yes.
Yeah.
And our soil is extremely acid.
So
it is good. For our flower beds, I don't put the mushroom compost around my azaleas and camellias and acid-loving plants. We do have a problem with phosphorus in the soil, depleting the soil of iron. So sometimes we will have to add iron, but yes, it is alkaline, and that's why a lot of people like to use it.
You use it, yeah, okay. And then Jeanette wants to know, how many feet above sea level are you, and are these efforts to get the HOAs to have less lawn? Yeah.
They are succeeding. I'm 13 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
The highest point, there's a golf course on Hilton Head Island where you go on to the ladies' tee box on the golf course, and it is the highest point in Beaufort County, and it's 19 feet above sea level. So that's our mountain. I'm not used to this. But the POAs, I think, are becoming, what they're doing, which is nice, is they're inviting members of ecology committees and inviting people who have trained as master naturalists and master gardeners to be on their POA committees, their architectural review boards, and they've been a voice of reason. And so I think, I know on my island, they are becoming much more lenient and much more agreeable to have a more naturalistic landscape. I mean, we were the first community in the state of South Carolina to be declared a national wildlife refuge.
Oh, wow.
And the golf course is certified by Audubon. So we have over 80 species of birds.
Wow.
One time I was gardening and I had this great white heron that followed me around in the yard. It was a little helper. The eagles and ospreys and all sorts of water birds. And the birds are great.
Wow. And there's a message from Anne up in Scotland saying, Aberdeenshire sends you a warm wishes, Wendy. Fantastic presentation. So tell us about your Scottish links then. So you studied obviously at Aberdeen.
Well, I wanted to study British history, and I thought I should go to a British university. Well, there's no master's degree in England, but there is in Scotland. It's a bona fide master's degree. And so I got a book, and I talked about all the universities, and I said, well, there are too many Americans at St. Andrews. So I think
and you'll only end up marrying royalty if you go there. Yeah.
I wanted to go someplace totally different, someplace I'd never even really heard about. And they talked about Aberdeen, what the size of the city appealed to me. It was before North Sea oil. My rent on my apartment was like maybe £1 a month. Of course, I didn't have hot water or a toilet, but You're a student,
Those are
you
luxuries. Who
those
needs
things.
those?
I did buy a car. I had a Mini Cooper, so I did pretty
Oh,
well.
fantastic.
And I just loved it. I just took a chance, went over there. I'd never been out of the country before, except to the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. And I absolutely made friends for life. And
Oh,
we go back about every 2 years and
yeah.
visit our friends and have a lovely time and
Yeah,
go back to the old uni.
Oh, fantastic.
There were actually 2 of us on this island who graduated within 2 years of each other from University of
Wow.
Aberdeen. I mean,
How
it was really weird.
bizarre. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it was very strange,
Yeah.
very strange.
What is it? Is there anything that you miss about gardening in the Midwest or gardening in the Northeast, eastern states? I mean, what is it that you kind of hanker after?
Lupins.
Yeah.
I love lupins. I had lupins in Massachusetts that were lovely. I also had 100 hostas. And I just loved them. The hostas were absolutely amazing. And I've decided that hosta growers have a fabulous sense of humor because the names for the hostas, I had one set of hostas that was Captain Kirk, Enterprise, and Vulcan. I had another set of hostas that they must have been thinking Mexican because it was jalapeno, habanero, tortilla chips. I mean, weird names. And I love the hostas. I do have them down here, but they're in deep, deep shade. Yeah, I would say those are the main things I miss. I never could grow peonies. Most people who move down here miss the peonies.
Yeah.
I never could grow them. I don't know what it was. Just could
They're not
not.
cold enough. They need some cold, don't they? They need
Well,
they're mostly plants of calcareous soils as well.
I could not grow them up north. And I had neighbors who had gorgeous peonies, but I could not grow them up north. I mean, there's certain things, you know what? You just have to give up. The last chapter of my book is I've killed more plants than most people have put in the ground.
Yeah.
I just have to say, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
don't beat yourself up over it. Try something that you can grow.
Yeah, exactly. And Jeanette's saying, so impressive to live in a wildlife refuge. I mean, absolutely, it's a wildlife refuge, isn't it?
It is, and it's really fun. And the entire island really cherishes that, and they really respect it. And there's a big ecology club. We have bluebird boxes all over the island. They do bluebird counts. We do bird counts. So people really are into it. I just would say, I wish more people would plant pollinator-friendly flowers. That's my thing. And I do have quite a large community pollinator garden that I maintain with 20 volunteers. So that's a good place, and everything's labeled so that people know what grows and what doesn't grow. I give a lot of talks. I teach classes at USCB, which is the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. Give talks at different garden clubs. So, I have to spread the word.
Yeah, definitely. That's fantastic. Wow, what a wonderful talk. Just so much fun.
Yes, thank you. No, exotic part of the world. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's so intriguing, and that the lovely back, the history and the intro to where you are, because it really is so different, isn't it? I mean,
it really is. And I knew nothing. I'd never been to South Carolina, and then I owned a house here. And the other frustrating thing is all the books about gardening in the Carolinas are written about the Piedmont and the mountains. Well, they're zone 6, we're zone 9. That's a big difference.
So
that encouraged me to write the book.
Good. Well done you for writing the book, and good luck with selling it. Yes.
And then I'm going to be seeing you in about 2 weeks' time, Wendy.
Yes, that will be very exciting.
To actually meet you in person.
Getting organized, getting packed, getting ready to go. Leaving my husband a to-do list. If my plants are dead when I come back, you do.
Oh, great. Oh, listen, it's lovely. It's lovely to put
Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, you're so welcome. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wendy. And see you in about 2 weeks.
Absolutely. See you then.
Take care, Wendy. Thanks again.
Bye. Bye.